The stellar wind drifted through the empty darkness between stars like a dead whale floating in an endless ocean. Captain Veltar Cronus stood on the bridge, his 4 arms crossed behind his back, as he stared at the view screen showing nothing but black space, dotted with distant points of light. Those stars were so far away they might as well have been painted on glass. Status report, Cronus said, though he already knew what his crew would tell him, the same thing they had been telling him for the past 6 days. Life support holding, at 60%, reported his second officer, Nexara. Her voice carried the flat tone that all Corvani used when delivering bad news. Oxygen recycling systems are stable, but we are losing efficiency each day. Food supplies will last another 23 days. Engines? Cronus asked, though he knew this answer too. Still dead, came the voice of Engineer Mordek Voss from somewhere deep in the ship's bowels, transmitted through the comm system. The quantum drive core cracked when we hit that gravity wave. I can patch the smaller damage, but the main crystal is split clean through. We would need a full repair dock to fix this. Cronus nodded slowly. The Corvani were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and careful planning. Their ships were marvels of engineering, their crews trained to handle any crisis. But some things could not be planned for. Sometimes the universe simply reached out with an invisible hand and crushed your dreams like an insect. The gravity wave had been a freak accident. They had been studying an unusual star formation at the edge of mapped space when space itself seemed to ripple around them. The wave lasted only seconds, but it had been enough to crack their quantum drive crystal and leave them stranded light years from the nearest inhabited system. Dr. Zith Ara Nexus looked up from her science station. Captain, I have run the calculations again. The nearest Galactic Council rescue ship is 4 months away at best. Given our current life support situation, she did not need to finish. Everyone on the bridge understood mathematics. Have we received any responses to our distress signal? Cronus asked. 3 automated acknowledgments from Galactic Council monitoring stations, Nexara replied. All confirm that rescue operations are being considered, but none can provide immediate assistance. The cost of diverting ships to our location has been deemed excessive. Cronus felt something twist in his stomach. The Galactic Council operated on strict efficiency principles. Rescue missions were evaluated based on cost versus benefit. A research ship with 12 crew members, stranded at the edge of known space, simply did not justify the expense of a major rescue operation. It was logical. It was sensible. It was how civilized species manage their resources. It was also a death sentence. What about commercial vessels? Cronus asked. Surely someone is traveling through this region. Dr. Nexus checked her readings. Long-range sensors show no ships within 50 light years. This sector is largely unexplored. The only reason we came here was to study those unusual stellar formations. No regular shipping routes pass through this area. Cronus walked to the view screen and placed one of his hands against the cool surface. Somewhere out there, their homeworld continued to spin. Markets opened and closed. Children went to school. Scientists published papers. Life went on, unaware that 12 Corvani were slowly dying in the cold dark. Sir, came Mordek's voice. Through the comm, I could try to build a short-range drive from spare parts. It would not get us home, but maybe to the outer edge of the Centauri system, if we stripped all non-essential systems for power. How long would such modifications take? Cronus asked. There was a pause. 6 weeks? Maybe 8. And that assumes I can make the fusion couplers work with civilian-grade components. The chances of success are not good. 6 weeks. They had perhaps 3 weeks of life support remaining, even with strict rationing. Cronus did not need to run calculations to know those numbers did not match. Keep working on it, he said anyway. But begin preparing the final data logs as well. The bridge fell silent. Final data logs were the last duty of any doomed crew. They would record their scientific discoveries, their personal messages to families and the circumstances of their deaths. It was how civilized beings faced the end, with dignity, preparation, and attention to duty. Cronus returned to his command chair and activated his personal log recorder. Captain's log, Day 6. The crew remains in good spirits despite our situation. Engineer Voss continues repair attempts while Dr. Nexus has compiled an excellent report on the stellar anomalies we observed before the incident. Our deaths will not be meaningless if this data reaches the scientific community. He paused the recording and looked around the bridge. His crew worked quietly at their stations, running diagnostics on systems that no longer mattered, monitoring sensors that saw only empty space. They were good people. They deserved better than this slow fade into darkness. The Corvani had explored space for over 2,000 years. Their ships had mapped half the galaxy. Their scientists had unlocked the secrets of quantum physics and dimensional travel. Their culture had produced art, music, and literature that inspired dozens of other species. But all of that meant nothing. Here now in this small bubble of failing life support drifting between the stars. Captain, Nexara said suddenly, I am detecting some kind of transmission. Cronus felt his heart skip. From where? Unknown. The signal is very weak and uses an unusual frequency band. It appears to be some kind of response to our distress call. Put it through the speakers. The bridge filled with crackling static. Then through the interference came a voice speaking in what sounded like broken galactic standard. The accent was strange, the grammar wrong, but the meaning was clear enough. This is cargo ship Iron Phoenix. We hear your call for help. We come to you. Hang on. The transmission cut to static. Cronus looked at his crew. Did anyone recognize that language pattern? Dr. Nexus was already running analysis on her computer. The linguistic patterns suggest, oh my. Captain, I believe that was a human vessel. A human vessel. Cronus had heard of humans, of course. They were one of the newer species to join the Galactic Council barely 50 years ago. Primitive people who had somehow stumbled into space travel through crude chemical rockets and determination. The galactic community generally regarded them as amusing but harmless, like children playing, with toys too advanced for them. How far away are they? Cronus asked. Nexara worked her controls. Based on signal strengths, approximately 3 days' travel at standard velocity. 3 days. Cronus did the math. They could survive 3 more days easily. But what then? Human ships were notoriously unreliable, built from salvaged parts and held together by what humans called hope and good wishes. Could such a vessel even attempt a rescue operation this far from civilization? Sir, Dr. Nexus said, perhaps we should decline their offer. Human technology is centuries behind our own. Their rescue attempt might endanger both crews. We should wait for proper Galactic Council rescue ships. Cronus considered this. It was logical. Humans were known for making emotional decisions that often led to disaster. Their ships regularly broke down. Their crews were untrained by galactic standards. Accepting help from such a source could be seen as undignified. On the other hand, they were dying. Open a channel, he ordered. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Veltar Cronus of the Corvani research vessel Stellar Wind. We accept your offer of assistance. Our coordinates are... He transmitted their location data, along with basic information about their ship and crew. Then he sat back and waited. 20 minutes later, another transmission crackled through their speakers. Stellar Wind, this is Captain Li Dongwu of Iron Phoenix. We change course now. Arrive in 3 days. You hold on, okay? We come get you. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Well, said Dr. Nexus after a moment, I suppose we shall see what human rescue techniques involve. Cronus nodded slowly. In 3 days they would either be saved or dead. There seemed to be no middle ground. He looked out at the stars again, and found himself wondering what kind of people would divert their ship, risk their own lives, and travel 3 days out of their way to help complete strangers. By all galactic standards, it was an irrational decision. But as the Stellar Wind continued its silent drift through space, Cronus found himself oddly grateful for irrational people. Continue monitoring all channels, he ordered. And prepare a full briefing on human customs and capabilities. If we are to be rescued by humans, we should understand what we are dealing with. His crew bent to their tasks with something that had been missing for days. Purpose. They had something to wait for now, something beyond the slow countdown of their dying ship. Outside, the stars continued to shine in the darkness, cold and distant. But somewhere among them, a human ship was changing course, racing through the night toward people they had never met. It was, Cronus reflected, a very human thing to do. The Iron Phoenix looked nothing like the sleek Corvani research vessel drifting dead in space. Where the stellar wind was all smooth curves and polished metal, the human ship was a patchwork of different hull sections welded together with obvious seam lines. Cargo pods hung from its sides like tumors, and its engines glowed with an uneven blue light that flickered occasionally. Captain Li Dongwu stood on his bridge, which was cramped and cluttered compared to the spacious Corvani command centers. Cables ran along the walls in bundles held together with tape. Warning lights blinked in 3 different colors, and the air smelled of oil, metal, and something that might have been yesterday's dinner. "How we looking, Minho?" Lee called to his engineer. Park Minho's voice came through the intercom, competing, with the sound of banging metal and what sounded like creative cursing. "Drive core is holding steady, Captain. Should reach the Corvani ship right on schedule. Though I still think we're crazy for doing this." Lee smiled and looked at the young woman sitting at the navigation console. His daughter Su Jin had inherited her mother's sharp eyes and her father's stubborn streak. She was plotting course corrections with the kind of precision that would have impressed any Galactic Council navigator. "Crazy how?" Lee asked. "Helping people is crazy now?" "Helping people is fine, Dad," Su Jin said without looking up from her charts. "Helping people when we're already 3 weeks behind schedule, carrying perishable cargo and low on fuel cells is optimistic." From the medical bay came the voice of Kim So-ra, their doctor and all-around problem solver. "I've been reading about Corvani physiology. Their biology is silicon-based rather than carbon. If any of them are injured, I'll be working blind." "You always work blind," called Nam Jiwoo from the cargo hold where he was securing loose containers. "Remember that time you fixed my broken arm using a tutorial video and some spare welding rod?" "That worked, didn't it?" So-ra shot back. Lee listened to his crew's familiar banter and felt the warmth he always experienced when his people were working together. The Iron Phoenix might not look like much, but it carried something more valuable than fancy technology, a crew that trusted each other completely. "Captain," Su Jin said, "I'm getting a clearer sensor reading on the Corvani ship. It's big, really big, and their technology readings are off the charts." Lee nodded. He had known this would be a challenge. Corvani were one of the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. Their ships were marvels of engineering, their crews trained to standards that most species could only dream of. What could humans possibly do to help such advanced people? "What's their situation?" he asked. Su Jin studied her displays. "Life support is failing slowly. No power to engines. They're drifting in a decaying orbit around that gas giant. If their systems fail completely, they'll fall into the planet's atmosphere and be crushed. Time until that happens? About 2 weeks, assuming their current rate of system failure." Lee felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. 2 weeks was plenty of time to figure something out. He had been worried they were racing against hours or days. "Any idea what happened to them?" "Near as I can tell, they got hit by some kind of gravity wave. Damaged their main drive crystal." Minho's voice crackled through the intercom. "Gravity wave. Those things can crack quantum drive crystals like eggs. No wonder they're stuck." Lee walked to the view screen where the stellar wind was now visible as more than just a sensor blip. Even from a distance, he could see it was a beautiful ship. Its hull gleamed like polished silver, and its design spoke of centuries of advanced engineering. It made the Iron Phoenix look like a flying junkyard. "So-ra," he called, "what do you know about Corvani culture? How do we approach this without insulting them?" There was a pause before the doctor replied. "From what I've read, they're very formal, very proper. They believe in efficiency above all else. They probably think we're primitives who got lucky with space travel. Are they wrong?" Minho asked with a laugh. "Maybe," Lee said, "but sometimes primitives can do things fancy people can't." As they drew closer to the stellar wind, Lee could see more details. The ship was nearly 5 times the size of the Iron Phoenix, with multiple decks and what looked like advanced sensor arrays. But it hung motionless in space, dark except for a few emergency lights. Sujin, open a channel to the Corvani ship. Channel open, Dad. Lee took a breath and tried to remember the formal galactic standard phrases his daughter had been teaching him. His accent was terrible and his grammar worse, but he had to try. Stellar wind. This is Captain Lee Dongwu of human cargo vessel Iron Phoenix. We are here to help. Please prepare for docking procedures. The response came quickly, in perfect galactic standard, spoken with the precise pronunciation that all educated species used. Captain Lee, this is Captain Veltar Cronus. We are grateful for your response to our distress call. However, I must inform you that our situation requires advanced technical solutions. Perhaps it would be better if you simply carried word of our location back to Galactic Council space. Lee looked at Sujin, who shrugged. He's being polite, she translated. He's saying thanks but no thanks, your tech isn't good enough to help us. Min-ho, Lee called. What do you think? Can we help them? The engineer's response was immediate. Won't know until I see what we're dealing with, but Captain, I've fixed everything from asteroid miners to luxury cruisers. Broken is broken, no matter how fancy the ship. Lee keyed the calm again. Captain Cronus, we appreciate your concern, but we came a long way to help and we don't give up easy. Request permission to dock and assess your situation. There was a long pause. Lee could imagine the discussion happening on the Corvani bridge. Advanced aliens debating whether to trust the primitive humans with their sophisticated technology. Finally, Cronus's voice returned. Very well, Captain Lee. You may dock with our emergency port on Deck 7. However, I must warn you that our ship systems are extremely complex. Please do not attempt any repairs without consulting our engineering staff. Sujin grinned. He just told you not to break anything. I got that part, Lee said. Cho Han-sol, get ready to handle first contact protocols. Remember what we practiced about being respectful. Cho Han-sol emerged from the cargo bay straightening his best jumpsuit. As their most diplomatic crew member, he would handle the initial meeting with their alien guests. Should I bring the emergency supplies? All of it, Lee confirmed. Food, medical gear, spare parts, everything we can carry. As the Iron Phoenix maneuvered toward the larger ship, Lee watched the Corvani vessel grow in their view screen. Up close, he could see the damage more clearly. Hull plates were cracked, sensor arrays hung at odd angles, and several sections showed signs of internal explosions. That gravity wave really worked them over, Min-ho observed, now on the bridge to watch the docking procedure. Can we fix it? Lee asked. Min-ho was quiet for a moment, studying the damage. Maybe. Won't be pretty, and it sure won't meet any galactic engineering standards. But sometimes ugly solutions work better than pretty ones. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that echoed through both ships. Lee felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity equalizing between vessels. In a few minutes, they would meet their first Corvani face to face. Remember, he told his crew, these people are scared and far from home. They might be more advanced than us, but right now they're just folks who need help. We treat them like family. Sujin raised an eyebrow. Family, Dad? Lee nodded firmly. Anyone who calls for help in the dark is family. That's what makes us human. Through the docking port's small window, Lee could see figures moving in the Corvani ship's corridor. Tall, four-armed beings in elegant uniforms, gathering to meet the crude humans who had somehow traveled across space to help them. Well, Lee said, checking his sidearm and grabbing a toolkit, let's go introduce ourselves to the neighbors. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing the interior of the most advanced starship any human had ever set foot in. The corridors were wide and well lit, the walls covered with displays showing ship status in symbols Lee couldn't read. Everything was clean, organized, and clearly designed by people who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Standing in the corridor were 4 Corvani, their forearms folded in what Lee assumed was a formal greeting posture. They were taller than humans, with gray-blue skin and large eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the human visitors. "Captain Cronus, I assume?" Lee said, extending his hand toward the one wearing the most elaborate uniform. The Corvani. Captain looked at the outstretched hand for a moment, then awkwardly reached out with one of his own arms to complete the handshake. "Welcome aboard the Stellar Wind, Captain Lee. This is my science officer, Dr. Zithara Nexus, my second officer, Nexara, and Chief Engineer Mordek Voss." "Pleased to meet you all," Lee said, shaking each offered hand in turn. "This is my diplomatic, Officer Cho Han Sol, Engineer Park Min-ho, and Medic Kim So-ra. My navigator, Su Jin, is keeping our ship running." Dr. Nexus stepped forward. "Captain Lee, may I ask, what exactly do you plan to do to help us? Our quantum drive crystal is cracked beyond repair, our life support systems are failing, and our power grid has multiple cascade failures. These problems require replacement parts that simply do not exist on a cargo vessel." The Corvani engine room was a cathedral of advanced technology. Crystalline structures hummed with barely contained energy. Holographic displays showed system status in 3 dimensions, and the quantum drive core sat in the center like a jeweled heart. Or it would have if half of it wasn't cracked open like a broken egg. Park Min-ho stood before the damaged drive core, hands on his hips, while Chief Engineer Mordek Voss explained the situation in careful technical terms. Dr. Nexus translated, when the engineering language became too complex for Min-ho's limited galactic standard. "The quantum matrix crystal split along 3-dimensional planes when the gravity wave hit," Mordek was saying. "Even if we could somehow fuse the crystal back together, the quantum alignment would be impossible to restore without a full shipyard facility." Min-ho nodded thoughtfully and walked around the damaged core, examining it from different angles. The Corvani watched him with barely concealed skepticism. What could this human, with his crude tools and basic understanding of physics, possibly see that they had missed? "So this crystal thing," Min-ho said, pointing at the cracked core, "it focuses the quantum energy into, what did you call it? Dimensional fold space?" "A gross oversimplification, but essentially correct," Dr. Nexus replied. "And without it, you can't create the space-time bubble that lets you go faster than light?" "Correct." Min-ho was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What happens if you don't use a crystal at all?" The Corvani exchanged glances. I don't understand the question," Mordek said. "I mean, what if you use something else to focus the quantum energy? Something that doesn't have to be perfectly aligned?" Dr. Nexus looked confused. "But the quantum matrix requires a precisely structured crystalline formation to maintain coherent field generation. Without that structure, the quantum field would collapse into chaos." "Chaos, huh?" Min-ho grinned. "Sometimes chaos works better than order." He opened his tool bag and pulled out a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and hope. The Corvani stared at it with horror. "What is that?" Mordek asked. "Harmonic field generator," Min-ho said proudly. "Built it myself from parts I salvaged off a crashed mining ship. Uses quantum resonance to stabilize unstable energy fields." "That is impossible," Dr. Nexus said flatly. "The theoretical requirements for such a device would require materials that don't exist and energy expenditures that would power a small city." Min-ho shrugged. "Works, though. We've been using it to keep our own drive stable for 3 years." He began connecting cables from his device to various points around the quantum drive housing. The Corvani watched in growing alarm as he bypassed safety systems, rerouted power conduits, and made connections that violated several basic principles of quantum engineering. "Mr. Park," Mordek said carefully, "what you are doing could cause a cascade failure that would destroy both our ships." "Could," Min-ho agreed cheerfully, "but probably won't. Hey, you got any spare power couplings? I need to route some extra juice to the field stabilizers." Meanwhile, in the Stellar Wind's medical bay, Kim So-ra was working with 2 injured Corvani crew members who had been hurt during the gravity wave impact. She had no experience with silicon-based biology, no proper medical equipment for their physiology, and no training in alien anatomy. She was managing anyway. "Okay," she said to her patient, a young Corvani named Texir, who had suffered burns from an exploding control panel. "This is going to feel weird, but I think it will help." She applied a gel compound she had mixed from human medical supplies and some crystalline powder she had found in the Corvani medical stores. The combination made no sense according to any medical textbook, but Sora had learned long ago that healing was more art than science. "The pain is lessening," Texer said in wonder. Sora smiled. "Good. Now let me look at your friend here." The second patient had suffered something that seemed like a concussion, but his symptoms were completely different from anything Sora had seen in human neurology. Instead of confusion and dizziness, he experienced color blindness and an inability to process mathematical concepts. "This is going to sound crazy," she told him, "but I want you to try humming." "Humming?" "Making a musical sound with your voice, like this." She demonstrated a simple tune. The Corvani looked skeptical but attempted to copy the sound. As he did, his eyes widened. "I can see colors again." "I thought so," Sora said. "Your brain processes sound and vision through connected pathways. The humming is helping to re-establish the damaged connections." Dr. Nexus, who had come to check on the patients, stared in amazement. "How did you know to try that? There is no established medical procedure for treating silicon-based neurological trauma with audio stimulation." Sora shrugged. "Sometimes, you have to try things that shouldn't work. Brains are weird no matter what they're made of." Back in the cargo hold, Cho Han-sol had set up what he called a diplomatic kitchen, a portable cooking unit where he was preparing food for both crews. The Corvani didn't eat the same foods as humans, but they could process some of the same basic nutrients. "This is surprisingly pleasant," Captain Cronus said, tasting the soup Cho had prepared from human ration packs and Corvani mineral supplements. "I was not aware that humans were skilled in cross-species nutrition." "We're not," Cho admitted. "I'm just making it up as I go along. But cooking is like diplomacy. You mix different things together and hope they work well as a team." Young Namjiwoo had meanwhile discovered something interesting about Corvani technology. While helping Dr. Nexus recalibrate a damaged sensor array, he noticed that the alien computer systems were having trouble processing certain types of data patterns. "Your computers are really smart," he told Dr. Nexus, "but they think too hard about problems. They try to find the perfect solution instead of just finding a solution that works." "That is how proper analysis is conducted," Dr. Nexus replied. "We calculate all variables to determine the optimal approach. But what if there isn't an optimal approach? What if you just need something that works right now?" Nam showed her how he had reprogrammed part of the sensor array to use approximations instead of exact calculations. The sensors immediately began functioning at 70% efficiency, not perfect but good enough to do their job. "This is highly irregular," Dr. Nexus said, but Lee noticed she was studying Nam's modifications with great interest. 3 hours later, Minho called everyone to the engine room to watch his attempt to restart the Stellar Wind's propulsion systems. His repairs looked like something from a scrapyard, cables and conduits jury-rigged together with clamps and welding, bypassing entire sections of the original system. "This cannot possibly work," Mordek said, staring at the mechanical nightmare Minho had created. "It's not pretty," Minho agreed, "but ugly can be reliable. Ready to try it?" Captain Cronus looked at the jury-rigged system, then at the humans who had created it. These people had ignored every established procedure, violated numerous safety protocols, and built solutions that should have been impossible. "Initialize the system," he ordered. Minho activated his harmonic field generator. The device hummed with an odd musical sound that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. The broken quantum drive core began to glow with a pulsing, irregular light that no Corvani engineer had ever seen before. "Quantum field is stabilizing," Mordek reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "Power levels are rising. Drive matrix is... I don't know what it's doing, but it's doing something." The stellar wind shuddered as systems that had been dead for days suddenly came back to life. Lights brightened throughout the ship. Air recyclers hummed back into operation. The artificial gravity stabilized. Propulsion system is online, the ship's computer announced in its calm, precise voice. Warning, propulsion system is operating outside normal parameters. Warning, multiple safety protocols have been bypassed. Warning, this configuration is not recommended by manufacturer specifications. But it works? Cronus asked. Yes, Captain. Propulsion system is functional at 68% of normal efficiency. The bridge erupted in surprised voices as the Corvani crew tried to understand what had just happened. Their ship, which had been dead in space for over a week, was suddenly alive and mobile again. How? Dr. Nexus asked Minho. How did you make this work? Minho scratched his head. Well, your crystal was broken, so I used quantum resonance to create a stable field without the crystal. The field isn't as clean as what you had before, but it's strong enough to fold space. Then I rerouted power through the cargo bay lighting system to boost the field strength and used the navigational computer to maintain field coherency. That should be impossible, Mordek said. Should be, Minho agreed. But it works anyway. Sometimes the best solution isn't the right solution, it's just the solution that gets the job done. Captain Lee, who had been watching the whole process, put a hand on Minho's shoulder. Good work. How long will it hold? Hard to say, could be days, could be months. It's not pretty, but it should get them home. Cronus approached the human captain with something like wonder in his large eyes. Captain Lee, your people have just accomplished something that our best engineers said was impossible. You have saved our ship and our lives using methods that violate everything we know about proper engineering. Lee smiled. Sometimes proper engineering. The celebration in the Stellar Winds recreation area was unlike anything the Corvani had ever experienced. While their ship's systems hummed with renewed life, both crews had gathered around tables that Chohan Sol had somehow converted into a combination dining area and party space. The humans had brought out something they called playing cards, small rectangular pieces of paper with symbols that seemed to serve no logical purpose. Yet somehow these simple objects had turned into the center of an evening of laughter, friendly competition, and cultural exchange. No, Namjiwu was explaining to a confused Corvani engineer named Vextar. You don't want to show your cards to everyone. The whole point is to keep them secret until the end. But how can we make proper strategic decisions without complete information? Vexatar asked, his forehands still holding his cards face out for everyone to see. That's the point, laughed Sujin, who had joined them after securing the Iron Phoenix. You have to make decisions without knowing everything. You have to guess and bluff and sometimes just trust your instincts. Dr. Nexus watched this exchange with fascination. So this game is based on incomplete information and deliberate deception? Pretty much, Chohan Sol confirmed, dealing another hand. It's good practice for real life. Most of the time, you don't have all the facts. You just have to do your best with what you know and hope things work out. But that's terribly inefficient, protested Nexara. How can you make optimal choices without proper analysis? You can't, Sora said, studying her own cards. But sometimes good enough is better than perfect, especially when perfect takes too long. Captain Cronus sat at another table, sharing a meal with Captain Lee and learning about human customs. The food was a strange mixture, human rations combined with Corvani nutrients in ways that should not have worked but somehow did. Your crew is very informal, Cronus observed, watching Minho and Mordek arguing good-naturedly about the best way to modify quantum field generators. They're family, Lee said simply. Some of them are my actual family. Sujin is my daughter. The others are chosen family. We've been through a lot together. Chosen family? People you decide are important to you even if you're not related. People you'd do anything for. People you trust completely. Minho and I served together in the merchant fleet. Sora saved my life during a pirate attack 3 years ago. Cho helped me through some dark times after my wife died. Nam was just a kid who needed a place to belong. Cronus tried to process this concept. So you base crew assignments on emotional attachments rather than qualifications? Oh, they're all qualified, Lee assured him. Minho is the best engineer I've ever worked with. Sora could probably perform surgery in zero gravity during a meteor shower. Cho can negotiate with anyone about anything. Nam has an intuitive understanding of technology that amazes me every day. Sujin. He smiled proudly. Sujin could navigate us home by the stars if all our computers failed. But you chose them for emotional reasons as well as professional ones. The two aren't separate, Lee explained. I need people I can trust in a crisis. People who won't abandon the ship when things get dangerous. People who care about each other enough to take risks for the team. Technical skills matter, but loyalty matters more. At the card table, Nam was trying to explain human humor to Dr. Nexus. See, it's funny because the human thought the alien was asking about the bathroom, but the alien was actually asking about the navigation system. Dr. Nexus stared at him blankly. I fail to see the humor in this miscommunication. Such errors could lead to serious diplomatic incidents. That's what makes it funny, Sora called from her table. Sometimes things go wrong in silly ways, instead of catastrophic ways. We laugh because we're relieved it wasn't worse. You laugh at problems? Sometimes. Laughing is better than crying, and crying doesn't fix anything. Dr. Nexus made a note in her personal log. Human emotional responses continued to defy logical analysis. As the evening wore on, the barriers between the two crews began to break down. Corvani found themselves asking questions about human culture, while humans learned about the complex social structures that governed Corvani society. Your people have been in space for 2,000 years, Sujin said to Cronus. You've seen more worlds than we can imagine. Don't you ever get tired of it? Cronus considered the question carefully. Travel is our purpose. We explore, we catalog. We study, we report our findings to the Science Council. It is orderly work, important work. But is it fun? Fun? The concept seemed to puzzle him. I suppose we find satisfaction in completing our mission successfully. We take pride in our efficiency ratings and accuracy of our reports. Sujin shook her head. That's not the same thing. Fun is when you enjoy doing something just because it makes you happy. Like this card game, there's no practical purpose to it, but we're having a good time. Humans do many things with no practical purpose. Sure, music, art, dancing, joking around with friends. Life's too short to spend all your time being practical. From across the room, Minho's voice rose above the conversation. No way that's going to work, Mordek. You can't route quantum energy through the sewage recycling system. But the conduits are already in place, Mordek protested. It would be an efficient use of existing infrastructure. Efficient, maybe, but think about what happens when someone flushes the toilet while you're trying to jump to hyperspace. The entire room burst into laughter, including, after a moment, the Corvani. The image was too absurd not to be funny. Humans, Cronus observed to Lee, seem to find humor in very strange places. We have to, Lee replied. Space is dangerous, ships break down, people die. If we don't laugh at the ridiculous stuff, we'd spend all our time terrified of the serious stuff. As the celebration continued, Captain Lee noticed something troubling on his wrist communicator. He excused himself quietly and moved to a private corner to read the message more carefully. The automated distress beacon from the Iron Phoenix had been broadcasting their location for hours. That was standard procedure. It let other ships know where they were and what they were doing. But Lee's long-range sensors were now detecting something that made his blood run cold. 6 ships, moving fast, coming from the direction of the Zarathi expanse. Pirates. Lee felt his stomach drop. The Zarathi were nomadic raiders who preyed on disabled ships and isolated colonies. They followed distress beacons like sharks following blood trails. A helpless Corvani research vessel and a lightly armed human cargo ship would be perfect targets. He quickly calculated distances and velocities. The pirate squadron would reach them in approximately 6 hours. Lee looked around the room at the mixed crews, humans and Corvani sharing stories and laughter, building friendships that transcended species barriers. He thought about Dr. Nexus, who was carefully copying down human jokes to study later. About young Nam, who was teaching Corvani engineers to play simple card games. About Cronus, who was slowly learning that efficiency wasn't the only measure of success. 6 hours to decide how to protect his new friends from 6 heavily armed pirate ships. Lee caught Sujin's eye and gestured subtly toward the door. She read his expression immediately and excused herself from her conversation. "What's wrong, Dad?" she asked quietly once they were in the corridor. "Zarathi raiders. 6 ships, closing fast. They must have picked up our distress beacon." Sujin's face went pale. "How long?" 6 hours, maybe less. "Can we run?" Lee shook his head. "The stellar wind's drive is barely functional. They couldn't outrun a cargo hauler, much less pirate ships. And we can't abandon them. We could evacuate their crew to our ship and run together. 24 people on the Iron Phoenix? We don't have life support for that many. And even if we did, the pirates would just chase us down. Our cargo hold is full of valuable supplies. They won't let us go." Sujin was quiet for a moment, running calculations in her head. "So we fight?" "We fight," Lee confirmed. 1 research ship with no weapons and 1 cargo freighter against 6 pirate raiders. "Those are terrible odds, Dad," Lee smiled grimly. "Good thing we're too stupid to know when we're beat. Go quietly, get Minho and Sora. Don't alarm anyone yet, but we need to start preparing." Sujin nodded and slipped back into the recreation area. Lee watched through the doorway as his daughter casually approached the engineer and medic, whispering brief words that made their faces go serious. One by one, the humans began finding excuses to leave the celebration. They had learned long ago to trust their captain's judgment, and they could read the signs when trouble was coming. Captain Cronus noticed the subtle change in the human crew's behavior. "Captain Lee, is something wrong?" Lee looked at the Corvani officer, this proud, intelligent being who had shown such gratitude for human help, who was just beginning to understand that there were different ways to solve problems, different ways to live. "Yes," he said quietly. "Something is very wrong. We need to talk." The bridge of the stellar wind had never seen a meeting like this one. Corvani officers sat alongside human crew members around a hastily arranged conference table, studying tactical displays that showed 6 red dots moving steadily toward their position. "Zarathi raiders," Captain Lee explained to the mixed group. "They follow distress beacons looking for easy targets. 6 ships all armed for piracy. They'll be here in less than 5 hours. Dr. Nexus ran quick calculations on her computer. "Our ship has no weapon systems. We are a research vessel. Your ship has only light defensive armaments designed to discourage small pirates. Against 6 dedicated raider ships, we're outgunned about 20 to 1. Sujin finished grimly. Captain Cronus studied the tactical display with the calm analysis that his people were famous for. The logical course of action would be to evacuate both crews to the fastest available ship and attempt to escape before the raiders arrive. "Won't work," Minho said, shaking his head. "The Iron Phoenix doesn't have life support for 24 people, and even if it did, those raider ships are built for speed. They'd catch us before we made it to the next system. Then we could evacuate the most essential personnel and leave the others behind with a surrender message," suggested Mordek. "Perhaps the raiders would be satisfied with capturing the ships and would not harm the remaining crew." The humans exchanged looks. "Zarathi don't take prisoners," Sora said quietly. "They consider it wasteful. Kill everyone, take everything valuable, strip the ships for parts." A heavy silence fell over the room. The mathematics were simple and brutal. They could not run, they could not hide, and they could not win in a direct fight. "So what do we do?" asked Namjiwoo. Captain Lee stood up and walked to the tactical display, studying the approaching red dots. "We fight, Captain," Dr. Nexus said gently. "I appreciate human courage, but this is not a situation where determination can overcome superior firepower. You would be throwing away your lives for no purpose." "No purpose?" Lee turned to face the mixed group. "You're here, that's purpose enough. But we're strangers," protested Nexara. "You barely know us. Why would you risk your lives for people you met 3 days ago?" Sora answered before Lee could speak. Because 3 days ago, you needed help. And when someone needs help, you help them. It's that simple. But now the situation has changed, Cronus pointed out. Now helping us means almost certain death for your crew. Surely that changes the calculation. Han Sol laughed, but it was a sad sound. Captain, you still don't get it. We're not calculating anything. You're not strangers anymore. You're family now. Family? We've eaten together, worked together, shared stories and jokes, Nam explained. Sujin taught your navigation officer how to plot courses using stellar triangulation. Sora figured out how to treat Corvani medical conditions. Minho and your engineer spent 4 hours arguing about the best way to modify plasma conduits. That's what family does. And family doesn't abandon family, Lee added firmly. The Corvani looked at each other with expressions the humans were learning to read. Confusion, wonder, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Your definition of family is very broad, Cronus said. Has to be, Sujin replied. Space is big and dangerous. If we only looked out for people who shared our DNA, we'd all be dead. Minho had been studying the tactical display while the others talked. Captain, I've got an idea. It's crazy and it probably won't work, but it's better than just waiting to die. Let's hear it. What if we don't fight them ship to ship? What if we make them come to us? Minho activated the display controls and began sketching out a plan. See this asteroid field about 2 million kilometers from here? If we could lure the raiders into it, we might be able to level the playing field. How? Mordek asked. Asteroids don't care how good your weapons are, Minho explained. They're just rocks floating in space. But if you know how to use them, Sujin caught on first. You want to turn the asteroids into weapons. Exactly. We set up position in the field, use the stellar wind sensors to track the rocks, then guide them into collision courses with the pirate ships. Dr. Nexus shook her head. The computational requirements would be enormous. You would need to calculate gravitational interactions, momentum vectors, timing sequences, and all of it would have to be done in real time while under enemy fire. Good thing we have the smartest navigation computer in the galaxy, Lee said, looking at his daughter. Sujin grinned. I can do the math, Dad, but we'll need both ships working together. The stellar wind has the sensors to track everything accurately, and we'll need their communication systems to coordinate the timing. This plan requires both crews to work as a single unit, Cronus observed. Corvani and human systems are not designed to interface with each other. They are now, Minho said confidently. I've been jury-rigging connections between our systems all week. Give me 2 more hours and I can link both ships into a single tactical network. Han Sol raised a practical concern. Even if this works, we're still talking about 6 experienced pirate ships against 2 jury-rigged civilian vessels. They've been fighting in space longer than we've been alive. True, Lee acknowledged, but they've never fought us before. They don't know what humans are capable of when we're protecting family. The next 4 hours were a blur of preparation. Minho and Mordek worked together to create impossible connections between human and Corvani systems, building a unified tactical network that violated every principle of safe engineering. Sora and the Corvani medical staff prepared emergency treatment stations throughout both ships. Cho and Nam worked with the science officers to calculate asteroid trajectories and identify the best positions for their ambush. Sujin spent the time in deep consultation with the Stellar Wind's navigation computer, programming attack patterns that would have been impossible for any single pilot to execute. The Corvani computer was designed for precision scientific calculations, but under Sujin's guidance, it began learning the chaotic mathematics of combat. Captain Lee found himself standing on the bridge of an alien ship, watching his crew work alongside beings they had known for less than a week. The barriers between human and Corvani had dissolved completely under the pressure of approaching battle. They moved together with the fluid coordination of a team that had been working together for years. Contact, announced the sensor operator. 6 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The main screen lit up with the distinctive silhouettes of Zerathi raiders, ugly, brutal-looking ships designed for one purpose, taking what belonged to others. "They're scanning us," reported Dr. Nexus. "Energy signatures suggest they're evaluating our defensive capabilities." "What do they see?" Lee asked. "One disabled research vessel and one civilian cargo ship. No significant weapons, minimal defensive systems. To them, we must look like helpless prey." "Good. Let them think that. How long until they reach the asteroid field?" Sujin checked her calculations. 18 minutes at their current approach speed. "All stations prepare for combat," Lee announced to both ships. "Remember, we only get one chance at this. If we miss our opportunity in the asteroid field, there won't be a second chance." The Zarathi ships moved in the standard pirate formation, a spread pattern designed to prevent their targets from escaping in any direction. They had done this hundreds of times before. Swoop in, destroy any resistance, take everything valuable, leave no witnesses. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Put them through." The main screen filled with the face of a Zarathi commander, a reptilian being with cold yellow eyes and scars that spoke of a lifetime of violence. When he spoke, his voice carried the confidence of someone who had never met serious resistance. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Vex Thol of the Zarathi Free Company. You will surrender your ships and cargo immediately. Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessels and the death of your crews." Captain Lee looked around the bridge at the mixed human and Corvani crew, then back at the screen. "Commander Vex Thol, this is Captain Lee Dongwu. I'm afraid I can't do that." The Zarathi commander's eyes narrowed. "Cannot human, or will not?" "Both," Lee said calmly. "See, these people are under my protection, and I don't abandon family." Vexthal laughed, a harsh, scraping sound. "Family? You would die for aliens you barely know?" "Yeah," Lee said simply. "We would. And we will." The transmission cut off. "All ships, battle formation," Lee ordered. "Take us into the asteroid field. It's time to show these pirates what humans call family." The two ships moved together toward the swirling cloud of rock and ice, their jury-rigged systems humming with shared purpose. Behind them, 6 predators followed, expecting easy prey. They were about to learn that humans were never easy prey. In the asteroid field, Sujin's voice rang through both ships. "First salvo in 30 seconds. Corvani sensors. I need precise. Tracking on asteroids 7, 12, and 23. Human crew, prepare to execute pattern alpha on my mark." The battle for the lives of 2 crews, one human, one alien, now united as family, was about to begin. "This is for all the people who answered when we called for help," Captain Lee said quietly. "This is for everyone who ever chose to stand together instead of running away." On the screens around them, 6 pirate